Welcome to this video about the Pythagorean theorem. Now, the Pythagorean theorem involves right triangles, which was a word of the day, so it's good to review that vocab. You had the legs of the right triangles that form the right angle. Every right triangle has a right angle, and these sides that form that angle are called the legs. And then you have the hypotenuse, another word of the day. So good to review that vocab. The hypotenuse is the longest side here, opposite the right angle, right? So this is called the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagorean theorem is named after our friend Pythagoras here. This is my drawing of Pythagoras. Interesting guy. You can look him up. Maybe try to make a drawing of him yourself if you like. And so it's named after this guy. He's from ancient Greece. However, he actually didn't come up with this theorem. He just taught it. He was kind of a popular guy, and they named it after him. So this is the Pythagorean theorem. Now, as I said, the Pythagorean theorem deals with right triangles. Okay, and in this right triangle, it forms a right angle here. I'm going to mark that we have a right angle here. Okay, and the side along here, this leg that forms the right angle, this is 8 units long. If you have a piece of graph paper, you could draw a triangle here. So we got 8 units this way, and we have 6 units this way. All right. So it's really easy to count the legs, right? Because they go along our grid lines here. It's a little bit harder to determine how long the hypotenuse is, right? This is the piece that we don't know. Here's how the Pythagorean theorem works. The 6 here for this leg, we're going to square it. We're going to find 6 squared. Now, if you remember from when we reviewed square numbers, right? Square numbers, you can form a square, right, where each side of this square is 6, and so 6 squared would give us 36 in here, right? And if we square the other side, right, so if we find 8 squared, and again, square numbers, you can actually form a square. If you remember when we did that, when we studied square numbers. So 8 squared gives us 64. Alright? So we just squared the 2 legs. What Pythagorean theorem tells us is that if we combined these 2 squares into like one really big square, that would give us the square of the hypotenuse. Right? If I labeled the hypotenuse C, C squared would be these 2 things combined, right? So we had 36 and we had the 64 that we're going to add to it. These 2 things combined, let's see here, would give us 100. So the squared of the hypotenuse is 100. The area of the square is 100. And we got that by adding the squares of the 2 legs. So to find my hypotenuse, to find what C equals, we would do the square root of 100. You guys did some square root problems on Khan Academy before, right? And so you should have that assignment done. So you know that the square root of 100, what we're going to get for C is 10. That's the length of our hypotenuse here. This side here is 10. I'm dealing with units here for our grid lines. So that's what the Pythagorean theorem is. To kind of summarize that, the Pythagorean theorem is if you have a right triangle, if I label my legs A and B, and for the hypotenuse we have C, we're saying that A squared plus the B squared would give me the hypotenuse squared. This is what the Pythagorean theorem is. And we're going to do a couple examples of that. So what you should do is take out a sheet of paper. Okay? If you need to pause this video to get a sheet of paper, you can. Alright, so you should have a sheet of paper. And we're going to fold this sheet of paper in half, long ways, like so. That way we get a nice crease that we can draw a line down the middle. On one side, I'm going to title it, we're going to find the hypotenuse. Very long word there. And on the other side, we're going to find a leg. A leg is one of the sides that forms the right angle. Okay? So, we're going to start with finding the hypotenuse. And I'm going to draw a right triangle. Now, when you do the Khan Academy assignment, you're going to see some right triangles. And it's always a good idea to just draw a right triangle on your paper, right? So in this case, we're looking for the hypotenuse. And you're going to get the legs here. Our legs are going to be 3 and 4. Okay? And remember, for hypotenuse, we oftentimes use the letter C. So we're looking for C. So as I said, the Pythagorean theorem is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And these a and b's are our legs. It doesn't matter which one is a and which one is b. So we're going to have 3 squared plus 4 squared equal to c squared. You can see how I plugged in the values for my a and b. So we should know our square numbers here. 3 squared is 9 and 4 squared is 16. So what this is saying is we have to add the squares of these two numbers. So 9 plus 16 is 25. Now, 25 is not my answer, right? 25 is for c squared, and I want just c. So in order to have this just be c and not c squared, I have to do the square root. The square root like cancels out that squared, right? What you do on one side, you have to do on the other. So c is equal to the square root of 25, which we know is 5. Alright, let's talk about finding a leg. So, let's say that in this case you have the hypotenuse. Let's say the hypotenuse is 10. And let's say that one of our legs here is 7. Alright? Again, it's always a good idea to write out the Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And if you draw your right triangle, like when you're doing those Khan Academy problems, you should draw the right triangle. It's good to label the sides. So in this case, we do have the hypotenuse, our c value. Again, it doesn't matter which one's a or b, right? So here, we could say this is a, I'll label that b, right? So we don't know what our a value is. This is where we're finding a leg. B is 7 here. So we got 7 squared equal to 10 squared. So we should know our perfect squares. 10 squared is 100. 7 squared is 49. Alright, this one's a little bit trickier than the one before. Here we're going to have to do that inverse operation. If I see a plus 49, I want to subtract 49 from each side. That's going to cancel this. We're going to bring down our a squared. So a squared here is going to be equal to 100 minus 49, which is 51. As I mentioned before, in order to find just what a is, because we want a by itself here, we're going to do that square root, right, to cancel out the squared. And we do that on each side. So a is the square root of 51. Now 51 is not a perfect square. Last time we had the square root 25, which comes out as 5. 51 is not a perfect square. If we took the square root, we would get a really big decimal. So I'm actually just going to leave my answer like this. If you had a calculator, you could type it in, find what the decimal is, or you can leave it just like this, since it's not a perfect square. So you have an example of finding the hypotenuse and finding the leg. On Google Classroom, I also posted a PDF of some notes like this. And you can also watch the Khan Academy video. This is to help you with the assignment on Khan Academy, and I'll be posting again soon. Thanks for watching.